My family laughed when I lost everything, now they beg for my help, it's their turn. The crystal chandeliers of the Thorn Estate ballroom glittered, casting a warm, deceptive glow over the assembled elite. Their light, meticulously calibrated to flatter, painted a scene of unblemished success. Laughter, the delicate clinking of crystal against crystal, and the murmur of polite, self-satisfied conversation filled the air, a symphony of success that vibrated with an almost palpable arrogance. Every surface seemed to reflect wealth, from the polished marble floors to the silk drapes drawn back from towering windows overlooking a meticulously manicured garden. At the epicenter of this opulent display stood Seraphina Vance Thorn, a vision in emerald silk, its rich folds shimmering with every turn. Her laughter, high and trilling, cut through the din, a triumphant anthem as she clutched her husband Lysander's arm. Lysander, a man whose tailored suit seemed less an article of clothing and more a second skin designed to contain an insurmountable financial fortress, beamed with a self-satisfied smirk. It was a permanent fixture, as much a part of his public persona as his expensive, precisely ticking watch. Tonight, they celebrated the acquisition of Sterling Towers, a deal that had not only cemented Thorn Holdings' real estate empire's dominance but, in Seraphina's often repeated words, finally put those absurd green energy pipe dreams to bed. The phrase, delivered with a dismissive wave of her perfectly manicured hand, always carried a particular sting for one specific listener. Orion Vance, Seraphina's younger brother, stood quietly by a tall, arched window, a glass of water, condensation beating on its surface, untouched in his hand. He was leaner now, his frame having shed the softer edges of youth, his face etched with a maturity that spoke of trials overcome, of a crucible endured. His eyes, once alight with an almost childlike idealism, a fervent belief in the inherent good of humanity, now possessed a depth that was unnerving. They were calm, almost placid, but held a silent, knowing quality that belied his outward stillness. He watched them, his sister and her husband, not with resentment or overt anger, emotions he had long since purged from his active repertoire. Instead, his gaze held the cool, detached observation of a scientist studying a predictable reaction, a physician diagnosing a terminal illness with clinical precision. Every gesture, every strained smile, every dismissive laugh was logged, analyzed, and filed away in the meticulously organized chambers of his mind. Orion, dear. Seraphina's voice, amplified by years of projecting across crowded ballrooms, cut through the air, carrying across the room with a theatrical flourish. She glided towards him, her emerald silk whispering against the floor, Lysander a shadow at her side. Their synchronized smiles radiated a false warmth, a performative concern that was, to Orion, far more chilling than outright hostility. Still nursing that water? Not much for celebrating, are we? Her gaze swept over his simple, well-maintained suit, a stark contrast to Lysander's bespoke attire, which seemed to shimmer with an inner smugness. There was a subtle sneer at the corner of her lips, a fleeting shadow, quickly masked by a pitying smile. It's all right, darling. Not everyone is cut out for the cutthroat world of business, are they, Lysander? Some prefer the quieter life. Her tone implied he had found his place in humble obscurity. Lysander chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate with condescension, a sound that, to Orion, tasted of dust and defeat. Indeed, Seraphina. Some prefer loftier pursuits. Though I must say, Orion, your Solaris Systems venture did teach us all a valuable lesson about the folly of putting all your eggs in one unproven basket. A rather expensive lesson, for you, I imagine. He patted Orion's shoulder with a patronizing gesture, his touch fleeting, almost an insult in itself, his eyes glinting with a secret amusement that he made no effort to conceal. But look at us now. Sterling Towers. A true testament to real, tangible assets. No, saving the world, rhetoric needed, just good old-fashioned grit and a keen eye for opportunity. And a bit of ruthless acquisition, wouldn't you say? He winked, a gesture of shared, cynical triumph. Orion met Lysander's gaze, his own eyes calm, almost placid, reflecting nothing back but a serene surface. He registered the veiled mockery, the thinly disguised triumph in their words. Every nuanced inflection, every slight shift in their facial expressions, was a data point. It certainly was a lesson, Lysander, he replied, his voice even, devoid of any discernible emotion, a flat, measured tone that offered no purchase for their barbs. Lessons, after all, are the building blocks of true understanding. And sometimes, the most valuable lessons are learned in the most unexpected classrooms. His words, simple on the surface, carried a hidden weight, a double meaning that sailed right over their heads. Serafina laughed, her head tilted back, a sound that grated on the ears, sharp and brittle like shattering glass. "Oh, Orion, always the philosopher. Still, it's a good thing you've managed to, well, land on your feet, isn't it? After everything." Her tone implied he had merely scraped by, a survivor of a self-inflicted wound, barely clinging to the edge of societal relevance. Lysander nodded in agreement, his arm tightening around Serafina's waist, a possessive, triumphant gesture. They saw a quiet, defeated man, clinging to the fringes of their success. They saw a reminder of their own superior judgment, a testament to their shrewdness and his folly. He was, to them, a living, breathing cautionary tale. What they didn't see, couldn't possibly fathom in their self-absorbed bubble of triumph, was the intricate web of strategy that had been meticulously spun over the past 6 years. They interpreted his silence as weakness, his detachment as resignation, his calm as an admission of defeat. But Orion's composed demeanor was not born of defeat, it was the quiet confidence of a chess grandmaster, observing his opponent's final, ill-fated moves, knowing the game was already won. He looked at their celebratory faces, their triumphant smiles, their glittering arrogance, and a single thought, cold and precise, formed in his mind, enjoy your moment, for the tide is about to turn. And when it does, it will not be a gentle wave, but a tsunami of your own making, the faint hum of the ballroom, the clinking of glasses, the self-congratulatory laughter, all of it was merely the prelude to an unveiling they would never forget. The question wasn't if they would fall, but how spectacularly. And he, Orion Vance, would be the one to orchestrate their descent. His presence was not an accident, it was an invitation to the grand finale. To understand the quiet storm brewing beneath Orion's composed exterior, one had to rewind 6 years, to a time when his eyes still held that flicker of idealism, that unshakable belief in a better future. Back then, Orion Vance was not the calculating strategist he had become, but a passionate visionary, driven by a singular, audacious dream, Solaris Systems. It was a name that still echoed in the hollow chambers of his memory, a reminder of pure, unadulterated hope. Solaris Systems was more than just a company, it was Orion's lifeblood, the embodiment of his very soul. He envisioned a world powered by clean, sustainable energy, a future where environmental responsibility wasn't just a buzzword bandied about by politicians, but a tangible reality, woven into the very fabric of daily life. He had poured every ounce of his being into it, his inheritance, the modest sum left to him by his benevolent grandmother, his meager life savings, accumulated through years of frugal living and part-time jobs, countless sleepless nights fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unyielding, almost naive, optimism. His cramped apartment had transformed into a makeshift laboratory, overflowing with circuit boards, delicate solar panels, reams of schematics, and the lingering scent of solder. He lived and breathed Solara, convinced that his innovative approach to photovoltaic technology, particularly his unique method for enhancing energy storage efficiency, would revolutionize the energy sector. He genuinely believed he could make a difference, that his intellect, combined with his passion, was enough. His family, however, saw his ambition as naive folly, a childish obsession. His father, a retired accountant who revered spreadsheets and predictable dividends, viewed it as a reckless gamble, a betrayal of sound financial principles. His mother, always concerned with appearances and the unblemished veneer of their social standing, worried about his increasingly disheveled look, his absent-mindedness, the way he seemed to exist in a world apart. But it was his elder sister, Seraphina, and her husband, Lysander, who were the most vocal in their disdain, their criticisms delivered with a practiced cruelty disguised as concern. Seraphina, already deeply immersed in the socialite circuit, her days a blur of charity galas and exclusive luncheons, found Orion's obsession with green tech utterly unglamorous, almost embarrassing. "Orion, darling," she'd often say at family dinners, her perfectly manicured hand waving dismissively, as if swatting away a bothersome fly, "aren't you tired of playing mad scientist? It's so earnest. Why not get a proper job? Lysander could find you something at Thorn Holdings, a nice, stable position. Something with tangible returns, something that would allow you to afford a decent suit." Her tone was never overtly cruel, never a shouted insult, but laden with a condescension that implied his pursuits were little more than a childish hobby, a whimsical distraction from the serious business of making real money. He could feel her pity, sharper than any blade. Lysander, ever the pragmatist with an iron fist disguised in a velvet glove, would offer advice that always bordered on thinly veiled ridicule, wrapped in the guise of business acumen. "Green energy, Orion. Fanciful. The market isn't ready for your idealism. People want quick returns, not ethical investments. You're building a house of cards on a foundation of altruism, and altruism, my dear boy, doesn't pay the bills." He'd flash a predatory smile, feigning concern while clearly relishing Orion's impending reality check. Lysander, a man who saw every human interaction as a transaction and every venture as an opportunity for raw power and ruthless acquisition, simply couldn't comprehend Orion's selfless ambition, his desire for a greater good. He believed in crushing competition, not collaborating for a better world. To him, Orion was simply weak, an easy target. Despite their relentless mockery, the constant chipping away at his confidence, Orion pressed on. He secured a crucial series of funding round, attracting a prominent venture capitalist, Reginald Davies, known for his unconventional but shrewd investments. Davies saw potential not just in the technology, but, crucially, in Orion's unwavering conviction, his almost spiritual belief in his mission. For a brief, glorious period, Solara Systems seemed poised for liftoff. He hired a small team of equally passionate engineers, leased a modest office space in a burgeoning tech hub, and started prototyping, the hum of machinery and the scent of innovation filling the air. Hope soared, a vibrant, living thing. Then, the world shifted. A series of unforeseen market crashes, triggered by escalating global economic instability and geopolitical tensions, sent the entire tech sector into a dizzying tailspin. Simultaneously, a powerful, well-funded fossil fuel lobby, seeing the nascent green energy initiatives as a direct threat, launched a relentless smear campaign, eroding public trust and investor confidence with carefully crafted disinformation. The final, crushing blow came when Reginald Davies, facing mounting pressure from his own increasingly nervous limited partners and a sudden, severe liquidity crisis within his portfolio, was forced to pull his crucial Series B funding at the 11th hour. The call from Davies, apologetic but firm, felt like a death knell. The collapse was spectacular, a public humiliation that echoed across financial news channels and social commentary. Solara Systems, so close to viability, crumbled. Orion was left not just bankrupt, but millions in debt, his personal guarantee on loans coming back to haunt him with a vengeance. The public ridicule was swift and brutal. Media outlets, once praising his vision as groundbreaking, now labeled him Orion the Dreamer, a cautionary tale of idealism gone wrong, an object lesson in financial naivete. His name became synonymous with failure. The family's reaction was devastating, a second wave of humiliation. Seraphina, ever the opportunist for social drama, hosted a sympathy luncheon that quickly devolved into a public dissection of Orion's failure, a performance for their relatives and mutual acquaintances. "See," she announced to their relatives, her voice dripping with mock sorrow, "I told him. He never listened. Such a waste of potential, such a waste of everything." Lysander, rather than offering genuine support, offered Orion a demeaning entry-level position at Thorn Holdings, a data entry clerk role, an offer delivered with a smirk that screamed, "I told you so, you fool. Now you'll see how the real world works." The rest of the family, eager to distance themselves from the stench of failure, from the stain on the Vance name, largely followed Seraphina's lead, shunning Orion completely. Their pity was laced with contempt, their concern with condemnation. He was no longer one of them, he was a pariah, an unwelcome reminder of hubris and ruin. The silence from those he once thought cared was the loudest, most painful sound of all. The pain was excruciating, a raw, gaping wound that festered with every glance, every whispered dismissal. But amidst the humiliation and despair, amidst the crushing weight of public scorn and familial betrayal, something hardened within Orion. The idealism didn't die entirely, it was simply forged into something new, a steely pragmatism, a cold determination, a razor-sharp focus. He saw the world for what it truly was, a ruthless battlefield where sentiment was a liability and power was the only currency that mattered. He understood, with chilling clarity, that the rules of engagement had changed. He disappeared from their lives. Not in a fit of rage or despair, not to wallow in self-pity, but with a deliberate, calculated silence. He sold his few remaining possessions, paid off what small, immediate debts he could, and vanished from the social circles he once inhabited, shedding his past skin. He moved into a tiny, anonymous apartment in a forgotten corner of the city, a place where no one knew his name, where the echoes of past failures couldn't reach him. He spent his days not wallowing, but studying. He devoured books on finance, market analytics, corporate law, and the intricate dance of international economics. He learned coding, data analysis, and the art of information arbitrage, spending countless hours dissecting balance sheets and anticipating market shifts. He spent hours poring over the failures of his own venture, dissecting every misstep, every external factor, every personal oversight. He understood that his idealism, while noble, had blinded him to the harsh realities of power and influence, to the dark underbelly of human greed. His secret weapon wasn't a specific piece of technology or a hidden ally with a magic wand. It was his transformed mind, a mind that had shed its naivete and embraced the brutal efficiency of the market, a mind capable of seeing patterns others missed. He learned to identify patterns, predict trends, and exploit vulnerabilities with surgical precision. He started with small, calculated investments, leveraging his newfound knowledge. A struggling tech startup whose stock he bought low, recognizing its hidden, misunderstood potential, a volatile commodity market he navigated with surgical precision, turning tiny fluctuations into substantial gains, a carefully researched short sale on an overvalued company, whose structural weaknesses he could spot a mile away. Each success, no matter how small, fueled his resolve, sharpening his instincts. He built an anonymous network of equally shrewd, discreet individuals, financial analysts, data scientists, and legal experts, who shared his disdain for the superficiality of the elite and believed in the power of quiet accumulation. They were silent partners, loyal only to results and shared principles. This was how Phoenix Ascent Holdings was born, not with fanfare or public announcements, but as a silent, formidable entity, rising from the ashes of his public failure, a testament to his own quiet, burning resolve. His motivation was no longer just about proving them wrong, it was about justice. It was about creating a system where true value and integrity could thrive, shielded from the corrosive laughter of the complacent. He would not seek vengeance in a petty way, not through emotional outburst or public denouncement, but through the undeniable, irrefutable language of power, the language his family truly understood. He would not just reclaim his dignity, he would redefine it, on his own terms, making it unshakable. And as his fortune steadily grew, so did his knowledge of Thorn Holdings, their methods, their weaknesses, their hidden liabilities. He was preparing not just for his own comeback, but for their inevitable reckoning, a carefully planned, methodical dismantling. The years that followed Orion's disappearance were a testament to his newfound discipline and strategic prowess. While Serafina and Lysander continued to bask in the limelight, expanding Thorn Holdings with aggressive, highly visible acquisitions, Orion operated in the shadows, a financial phantom. He was everywhere and nowhere, his influence expanding silently, his wealth growing exponentially, while his personal life remained meticulously private, almost monastic. He became a whisper in the wind, a ripple on the surface of the market that no one could trace back to a source. Phoenix Ascent Holdings became a formidable force in the global investment landscape, known for its uncanny ability to identify undervalued assets and capitalize on market shifts with an almost prescient understanding. It was whispered in exclusive financial circles that Phoenix Ascent had an almost supernatural grip on economic currents, always one step ahead, always making the right move, confounding even the most seasoned analysts. What they didn't know was that the prescience was the result of Orion's relentless research, his mastery of complex data analytics, and a carefully curated network of highly specialized analysts who could dissect financial statements down to the last, hidden decimal, exposing every vulnerability. He had built an intelligence apparatus specifically designed to expose weaknesses, not just for profit, but for purpose, to level the playing field. Meanwhile, Thorn Holdings, under Lysander's increasingly audacious and reckless leadership, soared to new, dizzying heights. They diversified rapidly, moving beyond their core real estate into luxury hospitality, international infrastructure projects, and even a controversial, high-stakes venture into deep-sea mining. Lysander's ego, fueled by these apparent successes, grew unchecked. Serafina reveled in their heightened status, her social calendar overflowing with invitations to exclusive events, her public image meticulously curated, every outfit, every smile, every curated soundbite designed to reinforce their untouchable status. They were the epitome of success, their names synonymous with power and wealth, their carefully constructed facade flawless. And in their boundless arrogance, they saw Orion's continued silence as confirmation of his irrelevance, a sign that he had simply withered away. He must be managing a small boutique, or worse, teaching, Serafina would sneer to Lysander, dismissing him entirely with a flick of her wrist. Lysander, too, believed Orion had simply faded into obscurity, a weakling who couldn't withstand the heat of the real world, a cautionary tale that had finally run its course. This belief in Orion's continued weakness, this profound underestimation of his capabilities, was a critical component of Orion's plan. Their hubris was his greatest ally, a blindfold they willingly wore. Orion, however, knew every intricate detail of Thorn Holdings' operations. Through his anonymous network, a web of discreet contacts cultivated over years, he had gained access to their most guarded financial documents, their internal reports, their hidden balance sheets, their private communications. He discovered the first cracks, subtle at first, then widening into gaping chasms, a series of aggressively structured loans tied to a speculative international development project, the Hydra project, that was far riskier than public statements indicated. Lysander had leveraged Thorn Holdings to the hilt, using a labyrinthine network of shell corporations and complex, opaque financial instruments to obscure the true extent of their debt and offload risk onto unsuspecting subsidiaries. It was a house of cards, built not on solid ground, but on layers of hidden liabilities and a desperate assumption of perpetual market growth. Orion didn't immediately move to dismantle them. Instead, he began to apply subtle pressure, a series of precisely calculated nudges. He initiated a series of carefully timed short sales on the stock of companies that were key partners in Thorn Holdings' more precarious ventures, causing minor ripples of instability, faint tremors that few noticed. He anonymously leaked carefully anonymized information to select financial journalists about unnamed conglomerates with unsustainable debt structures, creating a general climate of caution around similar large-scale, high-risk projects. These were not direct attacks, not thunderous blows, but strategically placed landmines, designed to destabilize the ground beneath Thorn Holdings without revealing his hand. He watched, observing the subtle shifts in their internal metrics, the increasing strain on their subsidiaries. Lysander, blinded by his own ambition, dismissed these tremors as mere market fluctuations, as mere noise in the vast financial landscape. Just the usual volatility, he'd scoff to Serafina, waving away her occasional, fleeting concerns, nothing we can't weather. We're too big to fail. He doubled down on his risky deep-sea mining venture, pouring even more capital into a project that was facing unforeseen environmental and engineering challenges, a project Orion knew, from his meticulous research into its geological and ecological impact assessments, was doomed to fail spectacularly. The small, seemingly disconnected events, the minor market dips, the veiled reports of corporate instability, the increasing, hidden financial strain on Thorn Holdings, continued to accumulate, like grains of sand, slowly, imperceptibly, piling up. The full connection, the orchestrator, remained tantalizingly out of reach for everyone else, building an irresistible, unspoken curiosity about the mastermind behind it all, a curiosity that only Orion could satisfy. Orion also subtly shifted the landscape around Thorn Holdings, creating a stark contrast to their methods. He began investing heavily in green energy initiatives, but this time, with a cold, clear focus on commercial viability and practical application. He funded cutting-edge research into new, efficient storage solutions for renewable energy, providing a real, market-driven alternative to the fossil fuel projects Lysander championed. He built alliances with powerful, ethical investors who shared his vision for sustainable growth, creating a parallel financial ecosystem, a new world order that subtly undermined the old guard, the titans of traditional, extractive industries. He became a silent force, not just eroding Thorn Holdings' foundation, but actively building a new world where they would have no place, where their predatory practices would be obsolete. The turning point came when the deep-sea mining venture, the Hydra project, hit an insurmountable technical and environmental roadblock. An unexpected geological anomaly combined with a previously undiscovered, highly sensitive marine ecosystem led to an immediate, catastrophic halt in operations. Billions had been invested, much of it borrowed, and the project was now a catastrophic write-off, an unsalvageable disaster. This single, monumental failure, combined with the hidden debt from the over-leveraged real estate deals and the general climate of investor unease Orion had carefully fostered, triggered a cascading financial collapse within Thorn Holdings. Their meticulously constructed facade began to crack, then crumble, then shatter. Suppliers demanded immediate payment for their services, lenders called in loans with ruthless efficiency, and their carefully concealed debts were exposed in a flurry of humiliating public reports. The financial fortress Lysander had built was revealed to be a hollow shell, filled with nothing but promises, smoke, and massive liabilities. Serafina and Lysander, once untouchable, found themselves scrambling, their empire teetering on the precipice of total ruin. Their frantic search for a bailout began, desperate, humiliating, and utterly predictable to Orion. Every frantic step they took, every panicked call to former allies, every dead end they encountered, was a direct consequence of the meticulously laid groundwork he had spent years preparing. The silence from Orion was not weakness, it was the calm before the storm, the deep quiet before the dam broke. The air in the ultramodern, glass-walled boardroom on the top floor of the Phoenix Ascent Tower was thick with desperation, a palpable stench of fear and defeat. Serafina Vance Thorn, her designer suit now bearing a subtle crumple that spoke of sleepless nights, her usually impeccable hair slightly askew, clutched a designer handbag as if it were a life raft in a turbulent sea. Beside her, Lysander Thorn, his face pale and drawn, etched with a haggard anxiety that had replaced his usual arrogance, continually adjusted the knot of his tie, a meaningless gesture of control. Thorn Holdings was bleeding out, hemorrhaging capital at an alarming rate. The public exposé of their hidden debts, the spectacular failure of the Hydra project, and the ensuing investor panic had stripped them bare, exposing their vulnerabilities to the world. They had exhausted every option, every connection, every last shred of dignity. Their only remaining hope, a whispered rumor in the highest echelons of global finance, was Phoenix Ascent Holdings, an anonymous, impossibly wealthy, and notoriously private investment group whose owner remained a closely guarded secret. "They're always so mysterious," Serafina muttered, her voice a strained whisper, filled with a mixture of annoyance and dawning dread. "Why couldn't they just do a video conference? This whole charade is demeaning. Making us come here, wait like this." Lysander swallowed hard, his throat tight. "We have no choice, Serafina. They're the only ones with the liquidity to bail us out. We need a capital injection of no less than 5 billion, and we need it yesterday. The banks have all closed their doors. This is it. Our last chance." His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, darted nervously around the pristine, minimalist room. No one else was present. The stark silence was unnerving, magnifying their anxiety. The only sound was the distant hum of the city, a quiet symphony of indifference. A single door, seamlessly integrated into the cool gray wall, slid open with a soft hiss, almost imperceptible. Serafina and Lysander snapped their heads towards it, their hearts pounding with a desperate, fragile hope. A figure stepped into the room. He was dressed impeccably, a tailored suit of charcoal gray, its fabric falling perfectly, his posture radiating a quiet power, an effortless authority. His face was familiar, yet utterly transformed. The soft idealism that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a cool, unyielding resolve. His eyes, though, were unmistakable, the same deep, intelligent gaze, now sharpened by experience and purpose. Serafina gasped, a sharp, involuntary sound that seemed to tear through the silence. Lysander's jaw dropped, his face draining of all color, as if he had seen a ghost. "Orion," Serafina whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with incredulity. What are you doing here? Is this some kind of trick?" Her mind raced, grasping for any explanation that made sense, any way to fit him into her old, comfortable narrative of his failure. Was he a junior assistant? A new, low-level employee trying to make a good impression? The thought brought a flicker of her old disdain back, a desperate, automatic attempt to cling to the old power dynamic, to dismiss him. Orion walked slowly to the head of the long, polished black table, his movements precise and deliberate, devoid of haste or uncertainty. He didn't offer a greeting, nor did he acknowledge their shock, their dawning horror. He simply stopped at the head seat, placed a slender, leather-bound folder on the table before him with a soft thud, and calmly took his seat. His gaze, steady and unflinching, swept over their faces, taking in every nuance of their panic and disbelief. "Welcome, Serafina." "Lysander," Orion said, his voice calm, even, and utterly devoid of emotion, a flat, controlled tone that offered no comfort, no hint of the brother or brother-in-law they once knew. It was the voice of a man in complete control, a stark contrast to the desperate, pleading tones they had used with other potential saviors in recent days. "Please, take a seat." He gestured to the chairs opposite him with an almost imperceptible flick of his wrist. Serafina, still reeling, mechanically pulled out a chair, her movements stiff. Lysander, however, remained standing, his face contorted in a mixture of disbelief and growing horror, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "What is this, Orion?" he demanded, his voice cracking, betraying the fear beneath his anger. "A joke? Are you here to gloat? To rub salt in our wounds?" He still couldn't comprehend the full reality of the situation. Orion's lips curved into the faintest, almost imperceptible smile, a smile that held no warmth, only a chilling understanding, a quiet recognition of their folly. "Gloat," he repeated, the word hanging in the air, a phantom sound. No, Lysander. There is no satisfaction in the predictable unraveling of a poorly constructed edifice. There is merely the quiet certainty of gravity. I merely needed to be present for the formal proceedings. He picked up the folder, his movements unhurried, almost languid. You've come to Phoenix Ascent Holdings for a bailout, I presume? You are Phoenix Ascent Holdings? Serafina stammered, her voice rising in disbelief, verging on hysteria. That's impossible. You were ruined. You vanished. You were a failure. How could you be this powerful? Her mind struggled to reconcile the image of the defeated dreamer with the man calmly sitting before her, the architect of a hidden empire. Indeed, Orion replied, his gaze unwavering, his eyes holding a depth that seemed to swallow their accusations. I was ruined. Publicly, spectacularly, and with no small amount of amusement from certain quarters of my family. I vanished, yes. Not to hide, but to rebuild. To learn. To understand the true mechanics of power, the intricate, often brutal, dance of the market, rather than merely dabbling in idealism. He opened the folder, revealing a stack of neatly organized documents, their crisp edges a stark contrast to the crumbling edifice of Thorn Holdings. And in that time, I learned a great deal about your operations, Thorn Holdings. More than you could ever imagine. He paused, letting the words sink in, allowing the weight of his statement to press down on them. The silence was deafening, broken only by Serafina's shaky breathing, Lysander's ragged gasps. Your Hydra project, Orion continued, his voice maintaining its level, detached tone, was a fiscal black hole, reliant on a speculative market and a deeply flawed engineering model that ignored critical environmental and geological data. Your aggressive expansion into luxury hospitality was financed by hidden, high-interest loans concealed within a complex network of offshore shell companies designed to obscure the true debt. Your entire empire, Lysander, was built not on tangible assets, not on sound investment, but on a house of cards, inflated by deceptive accounting, unsustainable leverage, and a boundless, yet ultimately fragile, arrogance. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a detailed, meticulously accurate summary of Thorn Holdings' complete financial collapse, including figures that only their most senior executives, and now Orion, could possibly know, the true extent of their liabilities, the specific defaulted bonds, the hidden covenants that were now biting them. Lysander snatched it, his eyes scanning the damning lines. Every number confirmed his worst fears, exposed every secret. His face went even paler, a deathly white. How do you know all this? This is confidential. How did you get this? His voice was a strangled whisper. Let's just say, the market has a way of revealing secrets to those who know how to listen, to those who know where to look beneath the surface, Orion stated, leaning back in his chair, his posture relaxed, confident. And I've been listening very carefully for a very long time. I know the exact sum of your outstanding debts, the precise value of your defaulted bonds, and the extent of your liquid assets, or rather, the stark, painful lack thereof. You need 5 billion, Lysander. And without it, Thorn Holdings, and your personal fortunes, will be liquidated within the week. Your lavish lifestyle, your estate, your entire public image, all gone. Serafina began to tremble, a visible tremor shaking her frame. Orion, please, she begged, her voice now a desperate plea, stripped bare of all artifice, you can't let this happen. We're family. We made a mistake, we were harsh, we were cruel, but surely you can forgive us. Think of mother and father. Think of the family name. What will people say? Her plea was not for him, but for her shattered image. Orion's gaze sharpened, a flicker of something cold, something ancient, passing through his eyes. The ghost of past pain. Family, Serafina. Was it, family, when you laughed at my idealism, when you called my dream, absurd green energy pipe dreams? When you paraded my bankruptcy as a cautionary tale at every social gathering, enjoying the spectacle of my ruin? Was it, family, when Lysander offered me a demeaning clerk position, openly mocking my folly, my unproven basket? He picked up another document, a faded news clipping from years ago, showing a triumphant Seraphina and Lysander at a lavish event, their faces alight with victory, with a headline about Orion's spectacular failure prominently displayed below. I remember the laughter. I remember the scorn. I remember the silence from the rest of the family, eager to distance themselves from my failure, as if it were a contagious disease. He laid the clipping gently on the table, a silent accusation. You saw me as a foolish dreamer, a naive idealist who deserved to lose everything. You reveled in my downfall, believing it proved your own superior judgment, your own ruthless efficiency. You thought I was gone. You thought I was defeated. You thought I was nothing. His voice was still calm, but it resonated with an unshakable power, a quiet force that filled the room. But I wasn't defeated, Seraphina. I was simply learning. I was observing. And now, I understand the game far better than either of you ever will. You chose to be my greatest teachers in the most unexpected classroom. Lysander, finally finding his voice again, slammed his hand on the table, a desperate, futile gesture. This is blackmail, Orion. You're trying to destroy us. We'll go to the media, we'll expose you. We'll tell them everything. Orion chuckled softly, a sound that sent a shiver down Seraphina's spine, a sound devoid of mirth. Expose what, Lysander? That a man who was publicly ridiculed for his failure rebuilt his fortune through legitimate, strategic investments, meticulously planned and executed? That I now hold the controlling interest in a significant portion of Thorn Holdings' debt through various, perfectly legal subsidiaries of Phoenix Ascent? Every move I've made is above board, meticulously planned, and legally unimpeachable. You built your empire on hidden debts and speculative ventures, I built mine on calculated opportunities and undeniable market truths. He paused, letting the full weight of his statement settle over them, crushing them. You chose to mock the one person who understood the true value of foresight and resilience. You chose to celebrate my ruin. And now, it's your turn to face the consequences. He pushed the folder back across the table towards them, its contents a stark testament to their demise, a mirror reflecting their ruin. Phoenix Ascent Holdings will not be providing a bailout. Your company is too far gone, built on unsustainable principles and irredeemable hubris. Consider this meeting a courtesy, a chance for you to understand exactly who holds the cards, and why. You were given a clear view of the consequences, and you chose to ignore them. His voice, though quiet, resonated with the finality of a gavel striking wood, ending a trial. Seraphina and Lysander sat utterly paralyzed, their faces a mask of dawning horror and utter despair. The man they had laughed at, the foolish dreamer, was now the architect of their complete and irreversible ruin, their nemesis revealed. The news of Thorn Holdings' collapse spread like wildfire, far eclipsing the initial, carefully managed reports of their difficulties. It wasn't merely a business failure, it was a spectacular, public implosion that sent shockwaves through the financial world and the upper echelons of the social elite. The media, which had once fawned over Seraphina and Lysander, portraying them as titans of industry, now dissected their downfall with ruthless glee. Headlines screamed about hidden debt and reckless ventures, painting a damning picture of hubris justly punished. The images accompanying the stories showed Lysander, once so polished and self-assured, now looking gaunt and disheveled, his expensive suits hanging loosely on his frame. Seraphina, her glamorous facade crumbling, her eyes hollow with disbelief, seemed to have aged a decade overnight. Their humiliation was absolute, total. Lysander's once feared reputation as a shrewd dealmaker was shattered, replaced by accusations of gross mismanagement, financial impropriety, and even outright fraud. Legal investigations were swiftly launched, creditors swarmed like vultures, and their remaining assets were systematically frozen. The Thorne estate, the very symbol of their opulence and the setting for countless mocking family gatherings, was seized and put up for auction, its grand halls echoing with emptiness. Their private jet, their luxury yachts, their sprawling art collection, all were systematically stripped away to satisfy their massive debts, leaving them with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the bitter taste of regret. Serafina, who had always defined herself by her social standing, her meticulously curated image, and her material possessions, found herself utterly adrift. Her friends, once so eager to bask in her reflected glory, to be seen in her presence, quickly distanced themselves, unwilling to be tainted by the scandal, their calls unanswered, their invitations ceasing. The invitations to exclusive galas ceased. The designer clothes, once her armor, now felt like a cruel mockery, ill-fitting and useless. She was seen, on one occasion, pushing a grocery cart in a discount supermarket, her face devoid of makeup, her eyes haunted, a stark, devastating contrast to the woman who had once ridiculed Orion for his simple tastes and scorned his idealism. The rest of the Vance family, humbled by the Thorne's spectacular fall, was thrown into a state of shock and belated regret. They, too, had invested small sums in Thorne holdings, lured by Lysander's promises of guaranteed, effortless returns, and now saw their own modest investments vanish in the economic maelstrom. More painfully, they were forced to confront their collective complicity in Orion's past suffering. Their silence, their laughter, their shunning, it all came rushing back with a sickening clarity, a wave of guilt that had nowhere to go. Aunt Beatrice, who had loudly wondered if Orion would ever amount to anything, at one of Serafina's infamous luncheons, sent a tearful email, brimming with apologies and thinly veiled requests for help, implying that Orion, now clearly a financial titan, should somehow rescue the family name from the lingering shadow of scandal. Cousin Marcus, who had openly mocked Orion's green fantasy as a child's game, tried to reach out, proposing catch-up coffees and hinting at opportunities for mutual collaboration, hoping to ride on his newfound success. They all saw his power now, and sought to leverage it, blind to the irony. But Orion remained impervious. He responded to none of their overtures, their desperate pleas for connection. His quiet satisfaction was not vindictive triumph, not a joyous celebration of their pain, but a profound, deep-seated sense of justice served, of balance restored. He felt no need for their apologies or their belated recognition. He had proven his worth not to them, but to himself, on his own terms. Their suffering was a direct, undeniable consequence of their own choices, their own cruelties, and their own profound blindness. He had simply held up a mirror to their actions, and they had recoiled from their own reflection. Internally, Orion felt a quiet calm settle over him. The bitterness he had once carried, the sharp sting of their laughter and scorn, began to dissipate, slowly, like morning mist. He wasn't consumed by anger. He was liberated by the realization that their opinions had never truly mattered, not in the grand scheme of things. He had built his empire not on their approval, their recognition, but on his own resilience and intellect. He had faced their scorn, vanished into obscurity, and then, in the most profound way possible, returned as the very force they had needed, and then so readily rejected. He was a ghost in their lives, a powerful, unseen hand that had orchestrated their downfall, not out of malice or petty revenge, but out of a cold, objective assessment of their actions and their inevitable trajectory. He knew that the family would never truly understand the depth of their error, or the quiet strength it took to rise from the ashes of public humiliation. But that no longer mattered. Their shock and regret were proof enough. The game was over, and the score had been settled. 2 years later, the name Thorne Holdings was little more than a cautionary tale in business schools, a case study in corporate overreach and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Seraphina and Lysander Thorn had faded into obscurity, stripped of their wealth and their social standing. They were last seen quietly managing a small, struggling bed and breakfast in a forgotten seaside town, a far cry from their lavish estate and glittering social calendar. Their lives had been reduced to the bare necessities, a stark and unforgiving consequence of their past actions, the consequences of their choices. The laughter they had once directed at Orion had become a distant echo, replaced by the quiet, bitter murmurs of their own regret. Orion Vance, however, thrived. He no longer sought public recognition, having found genuine fulfillment in his work and in the quiet shaping of a better future. Phoenix Ascent Holdings continued its quiet, strategic ascent, but its focus had subtly shifted. Orion had begun directing a significant portion of its capital towards ethical investments, particularly in the very green energy sector he had once championed. This time, however, his ventures were not idealistic pipe dreams, they were robust, commercially viable projects built on sound financial principles and cutting-edge technology. He funded sustainable infrastructure, invested in renewable energy startups with genuine promise, and supported initiatives that aimed to solve real-world environmental challenges with practical, scalable solutions. His initial vision for Solaris Systems was not dead, it had simply matured, grounded in a deeper understanding of market dynamics and human nature, tempered by experience. He lived a life of elegant simplicity, far removed from the ostentatious displays of wealth he once witnessed. His apartment, though spacious and comfortable, was minimalist and functional, filled with books and quiet contemplation. He valued time, knowledge, and genuine connection above all else, not material possessions. He spent his mornings reading, his afternoons engaging with brilliant minds in his network, and his evenings quietly enjoying the peace he had so hard won. The bitterness had entirely evaporated, leaving behind a profound sense of inner peace. He had achieved not just financial freedom, but emotional liberation, a release from the burdens of the past. He was no longer reacting to the world, he was shaping it, quietly, methodically, on his own terms. The rest of the Vance family, humbled by the Thorns' spectacular fall, had largely fragmented. Some had moved away, unable to bear the weight of their past judgments, the shame of their complicity. Others had learned a difficult, painful lesson, though few dared to directly approach Orion. They knew, intuitively, that the bridge had been burned not by fire, but by their own cold indifference, their own dismissive laughter. Orion did not hold grudges, for grudges only chained one to the past, but he also did not invite back those who had so readily dismissed him in his darkest hour. His forgiveness was a private act, a release for himself, not an invitation for reconciliation with those who had truly failed him. Orion's journey was a testament to the power of quiet resilience. He had learned that true strength wasn't about the size of one's empire or the loudness of one's laughter, but about the integrity of one's character and the unwavering pursuit of one's purpose. He had endured public humiliation, faced the scorn of his own family, and from the ashes of that defeat, he had meticulously rebuilt himself, brick by calculated brick, into a force far more formidable than his detractors could ever comprehend. His story serves as a profound moral lesson: the truly powerful are not those who mock the fallen, but those who rise silently, armed with wisdom and unwavering resolve. Arrogance often blinds individuals to the very opportunities that could save them, while quiet determination, when tempered with intelligence and patience, can move mountains. Never underestimate the quiet ones, for their silence often conceals a strength forged in the crucible of adversity. The laughter of scorn can echo hollowly in the future, especially when the tables turn, and those who once mocked find themselves begging for the very help they once denied. True success is not measured by external validation, but by the quiet satisfaction of rebuilding, rising, and ultimately, finding peace on your own terms, even as others face the consequences of their own making. If you found justice in this story, and a powerful lesson in resilience and the turning of tables, then you're in the right place. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you true stories of determination, unforeseen twists of fate, and the profound wisdom gained from life's most challenging moments. Don't miss out on more gripping narratives and inspiring tales. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when a new story drops. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced such ingratitude, where those closest to you mocked your struggles, only to find themselves in desperate need of your help later on? Or perhaps, what would you have done if you were in Orion's shoes? Would you have offered a hand, or allowed justice to run its course? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights fuel our community,